Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Direct Insurance Podcast, otherwise known as DIP, a podcast for independent insurance agents brought to you by Insurance Advisors Direct, a full-service FMO. I'm your host. My name is Kelsey, and I am the digital marketing assistant as well as social media strategist here at IAD. And today I have a very special guest, Donald Kirkendall. Donald, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm with Kirkendall / AffordableOne Insurance in beautiful Orlando, Florida, sunshine, blue skies. We've been doing this for 17 years or so, and we are integrated brokers. So we have specific people that work on all kinds of nice things: Medicare, individual health, auto, home, commercial business, life insurance, annuities, all those great things. Keeps us very busy.
Oh, yes, I bet. Yeah, you've got a very broad product portfolio based on the different product lines and stuff that you sell. So I'm actually glad that you are into the life insurance side of business, because that's actually what we're going to be talking about today, which is life insurance and why you should be marketing to Millennials and Gen Z for your business. So let's go ahead and dip into some insurance. So Don, or do you want me to call you Don or Donald?
Don is fine. Don is
Okay.
fine.
So
It's
Don,
comical, a number of people who call me Donald. There's probably not, I have, even though that's my name, it's my father's name, there's probably not 10 people in the world who use that. So Don is terrific.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so Don, so tell me, what is life insurance and how does it work? Or we're looking for just like a very elementary kind of like definition of what life insurance is and how does it work?
Well, it works very well. And the way that I try and present life insurance to people is the same way we do all insurance. Insurance is risk management. That's it. It's nothing complicated. Insurance companies don't hate you. They hate everybody. And so basically, life insurance is that risk management where you're trading a small amount of money on the front end for a larger amount of money. Life insurance is unique in that you're not going to get the money. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to that, but in most cases, you'll never see it. And so as such, great example for my wife, here's what's here. And should something happen, you'll have this available to you.
I definitely think that life insurance is a very important topic that all people, and especially young people, need to be having. And the reason why I really wanted to talk about why marketing to a younger audience, because I know that a lot of agents will have the mindset of that, okay, people in their 40s and 50s, they need life insurance because you never know, we're getting into those ages where, yeah, perhaps you're going to run into some additional health complications or health problems. So you're going to need life insurance just in case you pass away. But on the more important side, I mean, it's very important for these younger people to understand the importance of life insurance, because especially once you start getting into like your early 20s and, you get married or want to start to have a family, if you have a house, even any sort of type of bills or car payments, whatever it is that you need to have carried out after your passing, the life insurance is going to be very important for not only the cost of a funeral and a burial, but also to carry on day-to-day life for your spouse if anything were to ever happen to you. Because even if you don't have any health complications, you never know if, heaven forbid, you get into a car accident or something terrible happens to you just when you're going about your day-to-day activities. So Don, tell me, what are the different types of life insurance policies and then how do they work? I have 3 different types here that I have listed, which is final expense, term life, and IULs. So let's go ahead and go through those.
Well, and a great example is my granddaughter was 8. I bought life insurance for her. And my wife said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Well, first off, you'll never be able to buy it at this price. Second, we got her a prepaid policy." And so she was 8 years old. And as such, that's trying to plan out into the future. Term insurance is the closest thing to pure insurance. You're paying for it. When something happens, it's going to pay off. Final expense, we just helped somebody with final expense the other day. A lot of people into their 60s wake up and now they decide they want to get life insurance, but they're not going to get classical term insurance or a cost-effective basis simply because of their age or because of their health. IUL is a fascinating product. Universal life products kind of got a bad name, but they've come back. And if you understand the whole precept of it and how to operate it, it can be a terrific product in that it can grow much, much faster than any of the other types of life insurance and enables you to create a tax-free future.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's brutal when you get to be old.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting that IULs really started gaining traction in all places on TikTok. There are so many different types of people, agents and brokers that got into the industry because there was such a trending topic of conversation around life insurance and especially around IULs. So I actually had seen a TikTok of this one girl. She was a life insurance agent and she's like, well, I can retire by the time I'm 40 because I've now sold enough life insurance to a point where I can retire young because of how many people are so interested in putting their money into an IUL because of how many things that you can do with it and all the benefits of being able to grow this type of money. And then if you ever need to take essentially like a loan out of that money, you can without any tax penalties. So that's one of those great things about IULs.
Well, I'm the best terrible example of it, meaning that I had one. And if I had made all the payments and done what I was supposed to, I would have had $2.4 million a few years back. And yes, I would have written a check, went and sat on the beach for a while, and I'd have been in a great place. However, I didn't do that. Unfortunately for me, and like a lot of people, you get that letter that says your policy is paid up. No, it's not. And what they don't realize is if they stop making those payments, your policy is not paid up because the underlying insurance, the price of it grows. And so it eats into whatever cash basis you have. So we try and explain to people that when you take a look at an IUL policy, realize there's a time frame in there during which those time frames, if you do what you should do, you'll be in a fantastic place. Ultimate banking concept, universal banking concept. If you've read any of those kind of books, you realize that the richest people on the planet have made their money utilizing life insurance.
Yeah.
You can do that too. And if you're 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, you've still got that time factor going for you to go ahead with one of those policies.
Yeah, that's something that I think is very important. I think that's the reason why they gained so much traction on TikTok is just because TikTok does have, in general, like a younger audience. There are people of all ages on TikTok, and they're all learning about different topics, like even Medicare, for example. One of our associated agents, we actually just did a recent podcast episode with her, Joanne Giardini from Giardini Medicare. She has over 55,000 followers on TikTok, and she's teaching everybody about Medicare just by, going through the Medicare basics and then also breaking down pricing and things like that on how to calculate your taxes, all this other stuff. So she's gained quite a good following from just doing stuff on TikTok. But in general, the audience is a lot younger. So mostly millennials and Gen Z. So millennials are on average right now anywhere between the ages of 29 all the way up to about the age of about 42. And then Gen Z is on that lower end side, the ages of, I believe, like 12 to 13, I believe, all the way up to that 29-year-old age mark. So, and you can correct me on that one if I'm wrong as well. But for the most part, we're going to say Gen Z is going to be like in their 20s. And then millennials right now are in their like 30s and early 40s. But so in your opinion, what are the pain points of the people in these two generations?
Well, the biggest pain point, and it's tough to convince people of this but it's what we refer to as stupid stuff, in that you can't predict the future. If you could predict the future, you'd be down at the casino and you wouldn't be on this thing. But the reality of it is that you can't predict the future. And if you watch someone go out, I used to ride a motorcycle. Why did I quit riding a motorcycle? Well, because I fell off a couple of times and it was a bad thing. I mean, it seemed pretty cool flying through the air at 50 miles an hour, but that sudden stop just doesn't work out the way you'd like. I have a good friend who was in the service. He's in his mid 30s and he's going through major operations now. He's not going to get any life insurance. I'm sorry, but he's not going to qualify, and the things that he would like to do just aren't going to be there. The most difficult thing I have explaining to my children and my grandchildren is that as these years get up, things don't get cheaper. If you haven't bought a car lately, my first car cost $100, and I tell people that, and they're like, yeah, sure it did. No, it really did. And we put it together and we did things. When I went to buy insurance, I didn't have to have insurance on that car. Today, there is no such thing. You can't get a tire for $100, let alone get a car. We went out to dinner the other day and my wife was just totally blown away by it and what that cost. And so everything is going to accelerate on you. You're packing a phone around right now. That phone really costs $1,000. You don't think it costs $1,000, but it did, because you've got payments and all the things that are built into it. Now, project that out. I was an adjunct instructor at one point for one of the universities, and I used to teach a class in value system. And we would go back 30 years. And we'd go back 30 years and pull all the prices for houses, cars, food, And people thought I was making it up. You would have to stand there and give them the resource where you found those numbers. My first house was $30,000. The house that I'm in right now cost $100,000 when we first bought it. They just sold the house behind me for $1.2 million. So if you do that 30-year projection, you will be in total shock. So now comes the opposite end of it. The opposite end of it is, how do I fund that 30-year out, 40-year out program so that when I wake up that age, do I have what I have to do? And that's your real challenge, is setting aside $10, $20, because you want to go out to dinner. You don't want to spend $20 on insurance, but you need to spend $20.
Yeah. I definitely think that that's something that a lot of people, it's a huge topic of conversation right now, just with the threat of a recession or even another depression, for all we know, just depending on how well the stock market does or whatever other factors that are going into the US economic system. There are so many other factors at play in regards to how we handle our money and what we put our money towards. There are so many people that are just like, well, you know what, who cares? I'm just going to live for the moment right now. I'm going to spend my money. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like, you only live once, carpe diem, YOLO, whatever you want to call it. There are so many people that'll just be like, whatever, I'm just going to spend the money. But then the harsh reality of life sets in, and you're like, wow, I really wish that I would have saved that money for something else. And whenever I think to myself, like, do I need this or do I just want it? And I think that that is, one of the biggest pain points of my generation and Gen Z, is having to set aside the wants versus the needs. And something that we do need is life insurance for a multitude of different reasons. One being that you don't know, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know when we're going to die. And it's very important for young people to realize that even if you don't have a house or a spouse or a large number of bills that you will need to pay off, or that your family will need to pay off for you after you pass, you're still leaving your family with a very, very large expense when it comes to burying you and saying goodbye to you. Because my mother is a funeral home admin, and the average funeral right now is running for about $15,000. And that is the cost of the casket, the chamber, or like the tomb, so to speak, and, the funeral services and the printing and all this other stuff that goes into like putting on a funeral. And it's very expensive. And not a lot of people have $10,000, $15,000 just laying around to be able to, bury you. And that's the reason why we see so many GoFundMes happening out in today's world, where, people are crowdfunding when you could just have life insurance. And when you're younger, it's a lot less expensive than it is when you get older, because when you're younger, you don't have nearly as many health risks. And so therefore your rates will be a little bit less expensive than they would be if you were already in your 40s, 50s, or 60s. So that's an important thing that agents and brokers need to consider, is that if they are targeting a younger demographic of people, that the rates will not be as high as they would be for like an older generational person. And so it'll be a little bit easier to kind of teach these younger people that, hey, your life insurance is going to be a lot more affordable now than if you wait. And also, again, tomorrow's never promised.
Well, you've got a variety. My mom prepaid hers, and we were very happy that she prepaid hers, so that when the day came, we called a toll-free number, they picked it up, everything was taken care of. And that made our life so much easier, because people also mistakenly believe that if you pass away today, that your family will have the check tomorrow. They're not going to have the check tomorrow.
Nope.
You have a thing called probate out there that you have to watch out for. I just got an email from an attorney that did the probate for my mom, and we were talking about, we had sent them a couple customers, basically so that to help them with some of that pre-planning. Cremation, we'll have a percentage of people that we'll send to the cremation company, because that's appropriate for a certain group of people out there. But it's no different if you take a look at the stock market and how you put your money in. When it comes to insurance, at one time I had 6 life insurance policies. I had policies, so if something happened to me, my children could go to college. When they hit a certain age, those term policies expired. I didn't renew them, didn't need them, no need for me to keep paying for them. The final expense type of thing, that's exactly what that's for. Is you're not going to get a $500,000 policy at the price you saw on TV. That commercial drives me crazy. $9.95 a unit. All right, do you understand what a unit is? No. Okay, it's $1,000. Oh, okay. $1,000 is not going to do a whole lot for you at that point in time. And so we try and talk to people of different age groups, because we're right between 3 major universities here where our office is. I mean, literally one of them can actually walk over to us. It's about 3 blocks away. And they do. They come and see us. And we have interesting conversations about the things that are important to them, whether it's, their health or life or whatever it may be. But COVID is a great example where we kind of change things around in terms of the things that they're looking for in the future. You're right. The future to them is tomorrow morning, or it's a day that's never going to arrive. Well, guess what? It does arrive. It's like motorcycle accidents. You never forget the motorcycle accident, waking up in the hospital, because the very first question they always ask you is, do you know where you are? Well, you might know where you are. You might not know where. I mean, you're in a hospital and you might remember how you got there. But if you had a concussion, you might not remember all the details, except for the stupid thing that you did that flopped you off that bike. So it is a challenge. My son and I just had this conversation a couple of days ago. What's the right amount? The right amount goes with the right type of policy. Because again, you may have more than one. People in their 20s or 30s aren't going to look at final expense plans, term, and at a bare minimum, if we get a phone call from someone, at a bare minimum, we want to get them a term policy quickly because they have nothing. People have nothing, scared the daylights out of them. I think I mentioned to you, we just had a woman who was an athlete and died as she was about to deliver the child. The woman's in her early 30s. No reason that this woman passes away. Nobody expected that was going to happen. And so now it's a total shock to everybody involved in it. That doesn't happen every day, but if it happens to your family, then it's huge.
Yeah. And I think that that's something else that's really important to consider as well, is that I feel like as people, we don't care about something until it happens to us. Like, for
Absolutely.
example, when I lost my father, I had no idea that life insurance was so important and what it can really do in terms of keeping a household going. I was already established, moved out, an adult, living with my husband in our own house by the time that my father passed away. But without it, my mom wouldn't have been able to continue to pay bills because my dad was the breadwinner. And even though my mom still had a job, it wasn't enough to be able to keep everything going all by herself. And then on top of that, I have a younger brother who's special needs. So it's really important to have all of these different considerations. And he had 3 different life insurance policies as well that just kind of help keep things moving along. And not even just the cost of the funeral or the cost of the bills or whatever else goes into your household, but it's also the cost of having to even clean up after all of your belongings after you pass. Because my dad was a bit of a hoarder. So it was a process of being able to have the money to have like a dumpster and have things that he had been holding on to for so long that my mom just could not wait to get rid of, just like trash. And not just like paper trash, but just like things that he had been holding on to for too long. And then having to go through a bunch of clothes and seeing what could be donated, seeing what we wanted to keep and things that were sentimental to us. But
Just
now,
stuff.
yeah,
My
and
wife
it's
and I are having this argument now where we have an exercise room. The exercise room has a metal cabinet of office supplies that I have not opened in at least 2 years. She said, what are you going to do with it? Throw it in the trash. Oh, but it's so full of all those. Okay, dear, we haven't opened it in 2 years. All right. I have 2 other cabinets, one of which has leftover biker stuff, leather jackets, all that. What are you going to do with that? Throw it away. Give it away. Take it down. And she's like, I can't believe you're going to. I said, you have to stop buying stuff because stuff. Look at your closet. I saw something good the other day that said, if you haven't worn this thing in 6 months, give it away. Take it down, give it away, set it on fire, throw it in the trash, do something with it. And I'm into that big time right now. We're doing it in our office, even going back through files that we had saying 2 years ago, we digitized our file cabinet. Talk about a painful operation. Boxing it was easy. Shipping it off was easy. Getting a little disc back, that was or box back with a disc was the easy part. And then you began to realize that you weren't in those files anyway. Credit cards. We're going through our credit cards right now. I told my wife the other day, I said, you're going to cancel these credit cards. So when something happens to me, they're done, they're dead, cancel them, get rid of them. Why? There are recurring charges on these cards that you don't need. It's just that simple. You don't need it. And it's something that you have to look at. You have to look at real hard. But I will bet you money, if you go home tonight and you go in your closet, at least a third of the stuff in that closet you haven't worn in months. Months. Why are you keeping it? Why are you storing it? Give it away. give it to somebody that'll use it.
Oh, absolutely. I have gotten into the whole ideal of minimalism and intentional living just because there are so many things that like we don't need. And I love how I went to school for marketing specifically because I wanted to do market research, which is a little bit different from what I'm doing now. But I wanted to go into marketing and study market research because I wanted to help companies do better research on their target audience and to produce products and services that were intentional and that met a very specific need within the industry and that eliminated waste. Oh my goodness, I hate the fast fashion industry because it is so wasteful. There are so many different companies out there like Shein and the Wish app. And now the newest thing is that Temu app where you can get stuff for like 97 cents. And first of all, it's not ethical because there's somebody probably in a Chinese warehouse being treated absolutely horribly under horrible working conditions and working for less than what they are worth for a cheap piece of plastic that is probably just going to break in the next 2 weeks anyway. So then that's going to end up in a landfill and the plastic is going to take literally millions of years in order to break down. So I absolutely detest it.
Well, if you're a guy, there's a different kind of place, and I won't mention the name of it, but it's a store, and everything in the store is made in China. I guarantee it's got full of tools and those types of things. And so I work on vehicles, so I have safety glasses. I have 5 pair of safety glasses now. I can't tell you the last time I wore 5 pair of safety glasses, since 3 of them are still in the container, brand new, but they were 99 cents. Because if you bought one thing, you got something else for 99 cents. And going through my area where I do all this, I am amazed that all the things I have still in the box. And again, what's kept me out of this particular store was, during COVID, it was a tough situation and a lot of things didn't show up from that particular country. And so I've done a really good job of staying out of there now. But you're right. You're looking at clothing. I'm looking at tools. Look at tools, look at safety glasses, look at certain electronics, these types of things. And the waste, the waste is off the planet. I owned a restaurant many, many, many years ago. It's why I sell insurance today. And waste in restaurants, people just blow me away where they'll order buffets. If you've ever gone to a buffet, I can't go to a buffet. And I can't go to a buffet not because I don't like buffets, but because when you look at the food that's brought out, and people will take just about anything, but they don't eat it.
Mm-hmm.
They will eat a small portion of it. And then, so the rest of it, it's going to get wasted. And you think about the people on the planet who need the food, want the food, and it's not there for them. Shoes. I'm lucky to be married to a woman who isn't a shoe fanatic, but I've been to people's houses where, they'll have 50, 60s. For me, it's very, very simple, where I've got dress shoes and I've got casual shoes, and that's about it. And so I don't have 30 or 40 or 50 pair of men's shoes in my closet. But I've looked at that a couple of times and I'm like, you're wearing these things once a year, once every other year? No, not a great idea. Forget the money you wasted. You want to pay for your life insurance? Take a minimalist attitude and start looking at all the things that you tend to throw out and waste. And there's your money. There's your money right there.
That's literally what I was just about to say too, is that especially here in America, we are so into this idea of consumerism. And again, that's why I wanted to study marketing and market research, was to have more effective and high quality products as opposed to have cheaper products of lesser quality. I'm very much that quality over quantity type person. So when you think about how much money that you might have wasted over the past however many years on clothing, shoes, food, when you went out to eat instead of eating whatever you already had in the house, it adds up. And so you could have literally been paying for your life insurance policy with instead of buying the 10 pairs of pants on Shein because they were less than $15 a pair. It's like, okay, well, yeah, you spent that $150. Well, guess what? That was a year of your life insurance that you could have just paid into right then and there, depending on your age.
The challenge in statistics is, because I have an MBA and I have a marketing degree. And we had a meeting this morning where we're going through what are called key indicators in our business, is the discipline to live within those numbers. And that's a huge, huge challenge, because you've got the $50 in your pocket. You've got an opportunity to spend it, and having the discipline to not spend that money. Of course, these days, maybe you don't have $50. So you got that piece of plastic and you don't think of it as $50 when you pull out that credit card or that debit card and you get ready to buy something. Oh, I'm at the art fair. This looks so nice, or this will look so nice on me. But while marketing statistics are fantastic, being that firm in your decision is a huge, and again, I just keep going back to food because I've watched here in the office where people will bring food in. And now we're coming up on an extended weekend. Okay, everybody, clean out the food, get this stuff out of here. It's nasty. And I'm always, it's comical who brought what in that now they're going to throw away because they never ate it.
Yeah. There's just so much waste that ends up happening because I think that we live in this world where we don't think that resources are scarce, even though it's going to get to a point where they are because people are living longer, the cost of living is going up. And so eventually our world's population is growing even more by the day. And even though there are quite a few people in these demographics that we're talking about that are choosing not to have children just because of the cost, trying not to continue generational curses and generational trauma. But in general, like, our world's population is growing and the cost of living is going up. So in your opinion, without a life insurance policy, how long would the average individual in today's world have to work in order to pay off the costs of a funeral or burial and then continue living on a normal life?
Well, you say normal life, but I know that I have clients who are doing the greeter thing at that big box store simply so because that their Social Security isn't enough and they want to stay in that house. We've had a couple little old ladies that, we went to them and said, look, sell the house, take the money, do this, do that. And they're like, oh, no, I love my house. But it can go on forever. I mean, I don't see in some cases where it stops. My wife's a perfect example. If your home is paid for, you still have to pay insurance on that home. You still have taxes on that house, or they will come and get it. And so you're looking at what type of income you'll have once you decide to stop going to work every day. But I don't know that there is an end date. And so if there isn't an end date, then what are you going to do? I've been to some homes of some people that you just want to cry. And it's like, how did you end up here? Well, I didn't intend to end up here. This isn't where I started out. Or gentleman came in here and he's not with us any longer, had the exact same thing. I'm supposed to have $500,000. Well, you were, but when they sent you the letter and said that policy was paid up, you stopped making the payments. Well, I thought that's what it meant. No, that's not what it meant. What it meant was that it would consume itself after a certain number of years. And those are IUL policies. And you need to understand those differently because term is it's the reason we like to start people with a term so they have something because it's inexpensive. Typical, 20-year-old, $100,000 is what, $8, $9 a month? You have $8, $9, $10 a month. You're already wasting that on something that you could set that aside. I like annual payment or even prepaid now. We have prepaid plans where you can pay up the next 5 years because again, at $10 a month, $120 a year times 5, that's $600. You can do that.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
the key is making sure they can find you or that your husband's wife, whatever, can track that down. I think I told you, we actually have a binder at my house, has all this stuff in it. And I said to my wife, when this happens, here's the company you call, here's the number you need. You have to have that information available.
Yes, I think that's something that's really important to note as well, especially as people get older and when they get into relationships, get married, that to have all of that information like readily available, because even for my mom, like tracking down some of my dad's information was a little bit more difficult. She had to call around to quite a few of his coworkers or managers just to figure out where all of the insurance information was, because like I said, like my dad wasn't exactly the most organized person. So it can be beneficial to make sure you're having all of that information readily available to you and to your loved ones. So I know that you had just made a comment about someone who is 20 years old having an $8, $9 a month policy. But so at what age do you think that people need to start thinking about life insurance? Like realistically, at what age is that?
I mentioned to you earlier, when my granddaughter was 8 years old, I bought her a policy. And I bought her that policy because her mother has some health issues. And our first thought was, well, let's not risk that. Let's not let her sit there until she's 20 or 25 and discovers that she's got the same health risk. So now she's got a policy and she's started. And we'll probably buy her another one sometime in the next 2 or 3 years as she becomes a teenager of a greater amount. I'd love to buy her an IUL. It's something that we're looking at really, really hard so that by the time she's 30, if she wants to retire, she'd have that capability. But I started her at 8 years old. I'm a huge believer in child policy. My wife had a child policy. Now, it wasn't very much, but when we first got married, she came home and I said, what's this? And she said, my mom bought this for me when I was a little girl, and she got $1,000 or $2,000 from. But yes, today that's not very much. But if you're sitting there somewhere and you need to get food and you have no money in your pocket, $1,000 is a fortune. But I'm a huge believer in child policies. You don't know what's going to happen to your children.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most important considerations of that. Why should you target Gen Z and millennials for life insurance? So in your opinion, what do you feel like is the importance of that, other than just a cost savings basis or just a you don't know, no crystal ball sort of mentality?
Well, because of the variety of things that we do, we get an opportunity to speak to them. A lot of times we're going to speak with their parents. We had a young lady in here the other day. The fact that she turned 19 and had to buy car insurance to her was just insane. That idea didn't seem to work. And we're sitting here with her and her father, and we got into the conversation about, have you looked at some other aspects that are very, very important? Should your daughter have any issues? One of those issues is they may decide to have children, like this woman who just passed away. Most people don't consider how that changes a woman physically, not just having the child, but all the things that come into play that may make it next to impossible for her to get life insurance by her mid-20s or 30. And so we try and start the conversation gently with, do you realize that we could probably save you enough in another area to pay that $8, $9, $10? And so as such, a wise investment of that money would be to get life insurance. We had a woman in here and she's like, well, I don't have a boyfriend. I don't own a house. I don't have anything. Okay, well, that's today. Today's Tuesday. But tomorrow you fall in love. Next weekend, you wake up and now you guys are looking for a house or whatever it may be. I said, the problem is that when that opportunity comes up, you're not ready or something else has changed. I had a friend of mine died in a motorcycle wreck. His wife lived. That's the good news. Bad news is she spent 5 years trying to recuperate from getting hit in it. And she was in her late 30s. And so she didn't get up that morning thinking I'm going to get in a motorcycle wreck at all. Wasn't thinking about life insurance at all, except for him. And that's the biggest mistake women make, I believe, is that they want to make sure they have enough life insurance on their husband. But wait a minute, what if something happens to her? During the hurricanes, once upon a time in Florida, we had 4 hurricanes at the same time, right behind each other. Taking care of my twin sons gave me a whole different perspective on life insurance. Thinking about what was going to happen if my wife was away visiting her relatives, or what would have happened if she hadn't returned, and what that would have done to my life. So you try and bring a little bit of reality to everybody. And generally, when you do that, most people know someone somewhere, somehow, or it's mom, or it's dad, or it's grandma or grandpa. We were talking about my grandmother last night. And when my grandmother passed, no, she had nothing. And that got my mom thinking real fast.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad that you actually brought that up about having proper life insurance on your wife, because if anything were to happen to her, especially like while your sons were younger, I mean, I know quite a few of my friends are stay-at-home moms. And so even though their husbands are the breadwinner, so realistically, like mom might not be bringing in any extra income for the household, but mom is the CEO of the household. Mom is the one who delegates all of the bills. She's the one who budgets for the groceries and handles all of the normal day-to-day facilitation of the household. And people save quite a bit of money by having a stay-at-home mom or even a stay-at-home dad. My best friend, when she and her ex-fiance separated, she ended up having to find a full-time job because she was a stay-at-home mom. And her ex is now paying more money in child care, not child support, child care, than when she was a full-time stay-at-home mom. He is paying more money now than he ever did while having her at home, because the cost of childcare has gone up so significantly, even in the last 30 years. So even if you are a husband and wife, what will that situation look like for you financially as a father, not only just trying to carry on your normal day-to-day bills and raising children, but what will the cost of childcare be if you can't afford any other bills than just your normal household bills? Now you have to add like a nanny or another caregiver on top of that if you don't have a parent who can watch your children for you for either for free or, very discounted, mom, grandma discount,
Well, I'm amazed at the number of single moms with children from more than one father. And you look at that situation and you say, what happens when something happens to her? Because she has children from 2 different fathers. She's living with another person who's got a child himself and they're not married. Now, if something happens to her, what provisions have been made for those children? How are they going to live? How are they going to exist? Because they're all under 10 years old. Now, that's going to turn into a real mess, real fast. Or if something happens to him and there's a child, now more than likely she's going to take care of his child, but he has no life insurance. So now, how does she afford all of that? And then behaviors. You look at the behaviors of these people, the things that they do, the places they go, the things they get involved in. And I've had that conversation with half a dozen where I said, look, you want to go jump off cliffs, jump off cliffs. You want to go paraglide, paraglide. But you have two things that you better watch out for. Number one is if you don't come back, or number two, and we just went through this with a woman where you come back, but you've been injured and now the income that you had doesn't exist anymore. But the scariest thing that I see are situations where she's got children and more than one for more than one individual, and those she got money from the courts for childcare, but she has no life insurance. And if I were an attorney, I've said this to a couple of attorneys, I wouldn't let those guys out of court without making sure that they had life insurance on him, so that if something happens to him and he can't pay that, that her and those children are going to get taken care of.
I agree. That's a very good point that you bring up as well, because I actually do have about 2 or 3 friends that have a situation similar to that as well, where they were in a relationship, had a child with, one man, and then, got into another relationship and ended up getting married to this man. And then they had children together. So it's very interesting to have that conversation around who's going to be the person financially responsible for this child that is either from a previous relationship or somebody else's child, that maybe you're together with this person and you're in a relationship with this person, but perhaps you're not married. And, what is that going to look like for you financially, and then for this child? And then what's going to happen to that child if their parent does pass away? And so say, for example, if the other parent was never in the picture to begin with, I have scarily quite a few number of friends that had children with men who kind of just said, see ya, and it's the unfortunate reality that we live in today's world. But it gets to a point where who is going to be the person who's financially responsible for this child if anything happens to the parent that is the caregiver? And that's the scary part. So making sure that you have life insurance, especially for those single moms, single dads, is extremely important. And it's a great conversation to have.
Yeah, I saw some numbers the other day and they were frightening numbers of the percentage of women with children that they're either getting no support or limited support. I have a theory, and that theory is that if you've done something wrong in a past life, God brings you back as a single mom, because there's nothing in the world tougher than being a single mom. At one point, my mom was a single mom, and it's brutal. You have to get up in the morning. You have to go to work. You have to do all the things that any other woman does. But wait a minute, now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 children that you also have to do all those things. You got to answer the phone. We have an office full of single moms, and it's a huge challenge because they got to go to the dentist. They got to go to the doctor. They have a whole list of things. They've got to have dinner ready when they get home. We changed our hours around to try and deal with all of that. And that's why I say it is such a difficult place to be in to begin with, so that, again, if I were an attorney, it would be one of my prime things is to make sure that that man gets some type of life insurance to cover that situation, while the odds of him passing away or whatever it may be are pretty remote. Doesn't matter. What matters is that if you're that woman involved in that situation, that's going to be the difference between having a fairly decent life and just having a burden on you that's truly unthinkable.
Yes, I think that it is very important for single moms to have this conversation with their previous relationships and the men that they've either been in previous relationships with that they have children with, or even their current partner, even if they're unmarried. Because like I said before, I do have, maybe about 2 or 3 friends that are single moms, and absolutely right. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. I feel like there are 3 things in this world that I'm terrified of. And number 1 is losing my husband. And number 2 is debt. Number 3 is being a single mom, because I've seen so many of my friends go through it and it sucks. It really does. Having very limited support, and especially when you don't live super close to your parents or your other, friends or family that would be normally like a big help to you. If you live sometimes even states away from your really close friends and family, it's brutal. But so as an agent, how should you be marketing marketing yourself to this demographic? Now, I know that you said that you're in a great geographical location, or your office is between 3 different major universities down there in Florida. But so say for somebody who doesn't, have an office super close to these target audiences, what should you be doing to market yourself to these people?
We try and get engaged. We want to have that conversation. That's the most difficult part of it, because if you don't have we're fortunate in that, yes, we have an office. People walk in the door sometimes. And so that's a good thing. But I just want to back you up on something. Women need to understand that the fact that he doesn't want to pay for it doesn't stop them from getting life insurance on him. They can be the owner of that policy. There are non-medical policies that they can get, and you pay a little bit more. But if you're in your 20s, you're still in that $8, $9, $10, $12 a month. And I realize that she might not believe that she has that money, but she's better off to have that money or go to her parents or find a way to fund that, because no, you don't need, you have to inform him that you're doing this, but they can buy that themselves. So they don't have to depend upon that man, whoever he may be, to take the action. She can do it herself. And so in terms of marketing to these people, one of the things that we talk about a lot is the parents. We actually have little cards here. We were going through some things this morning, and we have 2 sets of life insurance cards. One says your parents don't have enough life insurance. The other one says you don't have enough life insurance. And we came up with that simply because we found a lot of parents did not have enough life insurance, and that the description on the other side of the card talks about now is the time to help your children get life insurance. So you kind of mark it backwards, meaning that I'm not targeting you, I'm targeting your mom and dad, because your mom and dad already know the value of it and they know how important it is. And so it's the kind of conversation where they can say to me, I'd like you to talk to my daughter. I want you to have this conversation with her. Okay. When is she available? We can pick up the phone. We can do a Zoom call, go to meeting, whatever's easiest for her, and have that very conversation. And if they wish to fund it, they could even fund it for a period of time for her, like I did with my granddaughter. I bought it. It's there. Now she has it. Can't take it away from her.
Yeah, I think that that is something that it is very interesting that you brought up as well, is targeting essentially the parents and then being like, hey, well, you need to have this conversation with my daughter, because that is something that I really struggle with, is setting aside the time to make appointments for stuff. I cannot tell you how many times I have set a reminder on my phone or put it on my fridge or had it written out on the dining room table or something somewhere to be like, call the dentist, make an appointment, pay this bill over the phone. And I forget to do it every single day. So for me personally, I would benefit more from having someone contact me, because if I have to be the one to set up the appointment, it's not going to get done. There are still some times where I'm just like, Mom, can you make my dentist appointment for me? Even though I'm 31 and I'm a grown woman and I pay my own bills, but sometimes I still need somebody to just get the ball rolling for me.
Well, now with the electronic thing, it's not like years ago where we had 20 pages of paper to go through. I mean, we can do the whole thing in literally roughly 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then a conversation that we had in the office recently was talking about a certain company and the way they do it. And when people call in and say, my mom just passed away, they actually have a script that they go into. I think it's a little cold-blooded. I understand the direction they're going with it, but they actually jump right into the whole life insurance conversation of, okay, now your mom has passed away. What happened to your dad? What happens for you? Where are you going to be with that? Because yes, I've taken up collections for people. One of the saddest days for me was a man that we had on a Medicare supplement who passed away, and I never offered him life insurance. And it was sad because when he passed away, we had to take up a collection for the service to help pay for the funeral and all that. And I was just so mad at myself for weeks after that. And I'll never forget it. I mean, his name is always right there in the back of my mind, thinking about how sad that was, simply because when he got that supplement, we knew that he had hit a certain age and that this was something that he was going to be. But in terms of younger people, we talk to mom and dad a lot. Do you understand? You can buy this for her. You can buy it now. People with younger children, we have a little postcard we like to send out and say, congratulations, you just had a boy. Now's that time to buy that little life insurance policy so that he can have life insurance the rest of his life.
Yes, it is very important to get in with the parents first, just because I think that parents do have a little bit more, obviously, more leeway in terms of being able to teach their kids about the importance of different things, because obviously we as children, we do look up to our parents for a good majority of our lives to teach us those valuable life lessons. But so how can you as an agent or a broker solve the pain points of the Gen Z or millennial generation for growing their wealth while still maintaining current wealth for themselves today? I know that we had talked about reframing the mindset of being a little bit more minimalistic and not spending that type of money on the 10 Starbucks lattes that you normally get per month that can end up being $40, $50, and reframing that mindset into life insurance. But how would you, talking to someone that maybe hasn't had this life insurance conversation before and has never really lost anyone in their life, and they don't understand the value of life insurance, how do you present this information to them to make them realize, oh crap, I need to do this today?
It's all about stories. And there are very few people that I know that have not lost someone. And I don't care. My beautiful granddaughter, I use her for everything, but she's lost her other grandmother just a couple of years ago. And going to that service, I mean, she's now 11, so she would have been 9. And trying to watch her and what she was going through, because your grandmother dies, you love your grandmother. Very few people do not have great relationships with their grandparents. I mean, it happens, but it's about the story. And so watching what she was going through at that time. So when I talk to these folks, my approach is always, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your family. Let's talk about what's going to be important to you as you move forward in life. Because yes, you want to go down and pick up that pizza. You want to go down, you want to get that new car. You want to go get whatever it is that you want to go get. But tell me about the people that you've already lost in your life: grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, and what their families went through. Because realistically, that is the call that we get is, my brother just died, and I'm watching what his family is going through, and it's painful. I mean, they may lose their house at a bare minimum. They're going to have to move. They're having trouble paying their bills. And yep, they absolutely are. It's going to happen. And as such, let's talk about how that doesn't happen to you. And again, we get a call every now and then, not too often, but I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have a husband. I don't have children. And the words are always yet. Because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it isn't going to happen. And so let's talk about where you want to be on the day that those things do happen. But there are just so many stories out there: the athlete, the grandchild, the neighbor, the whatever it is that has happened, that you have to give people something that they can relate to. Because sense of urgency, when you're in your 20s, your biggest sense of urgency is getting over to the pizza place or getting over to the beer place. Or if you're a guy, getting the money I've wasted on automobiles just scares me to death. If I had all that money back, I'd retire tomorrow. And it is a waste. I mean, it was fun at the time and it was terrific, but the reality of it is you're never going to get that back. It's not really an investment per se, but if you're a guy, that's what you want to do. The shoes. We always talk about women's shoes. It seemed like a great idea at the time, but I think you've got to bring the story back to something they can relate to. And I think all of us have someone in our life, whether it's a friend, neighbor, relative, where we've seen these things happen.
Yes, I agree that storytelling is something that can be a great way to present something in sales terms too. So when I was in school, I had a professor that always used to say heart, brain, wallet, because if you can have someone have an emotional connection to something in their heart, it'll make more sense to them in their mind, which will therefore make them realize that, okay, this is something that I do need to make a purchase on.
It's a terrible thing. We had a tragic story many years ago. We had a company that they paid for their employees' insurance, and we had this fantastic back then program where it was perfect for moms in that no copays, virtually no out-of-pocket. It was terrific. And a woman calls me up one year and she goes, I have to get rid of my insurance. Why? Your employer is paying for the biggest portion of it. Yeah, but my husband's bought a brand new TV for Christmas and we can't make both payments. And I said, you're still married to this guy? She's like, what? I said, a TV. I said, does he not understand what one trip to the doctor, one trip to the ER, one trip to a hospital could cost you? That TV's that big a deal? He needs to get a second job. And I was, he called me up and he goes, I don't appreciate it. I said, I don't care what you appreciate. I said, your wife has probably the best thing she could have in the market where we live. And for you to go and say, I'm getting a TV, well, that's just none of your business. Okay, well, then that's fine. It's none of my business. But the reality of it is that when you have a problem and you have children, and I've been in every ER in Central Florida where I live, I said, when you go there and they come to you for money, they're going to want their money. They don't have that sense of humor about TVs that you think they do. And so, yeah, those things happen, but everybody's got a story. Everybody knows a story.
Yeah, I agree. I think that financial responsibility is something that obviously is not taught in our public school systems or just really in any school system. One of the things that I'm very, very thankful for is that my husband and I are both very financially responsible. We know that we have to pay ourselves first, and that we know that all the bills have to get paid first before we go out and spend any unnecessary money, and that we do have to have a certain, percentage of our income that has to go into our savings account and pay towards insurance and whatnot. But that's because we've been through the more strugglesome side of things. We both remember what it was like as kids when like our parents were struggling, and especially going through the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. Like we remember what that was like on our parents and, the issues that it caused for them. And that we were both very thankful that our families had, savings in order to kind of get us through those tough times. And that's something that's really important. But at the end of the day, if you don't have that financial responsibility, if you don't have someone telling you or teaching you how to be financially responsible and how to pay your bills, I mean, granted, all of your bills are the most important, but what are the bills that you can eliminate, like subscription services or streaming services, things that you can eliminate from your monthly bills that are just not necessary. But in general, how is it that we are able to teach younger people the things that are going to be the most important, and not just spending a bunch of money on fast food or Starbucks or, insert money costing money wasteful like money activities here?
What's fascinating to me is people that have fast food delivered. Okay, so first off, this isn't the greatest thing you should eat to begin with. Second, the price of that stuff is crazy. Now you're going to pay somebody on top of it to bring it to your house. Then you want to say that you don't have any money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I that's the reason why I pack my lunch every single day, because I just cannot from somebody who worked in food service for a long time. I just absolutely detest the fact that there is so many like hidden costs in food service, and I'd rather just make it myself, and I'd rather spend the time than spend the money.
Well, yeah, it's
But
comical because most days I bring a sandwich, and people are like, "You're the owner. Why do you bring a sandwich?" I go, "Because I'm cheap."
yeah,
Because I just
that's
hate
me.
going
I
out.
think it's just because I'm cheap too.
I don't mind going out every now and then and getting something that's, but the reality is, we ate last night and we have meatloaf left over. And so as such, I'll make me a meatloaf sandwich or whatever it happens to be. And today I'm having franks and beans, hot dogs and beans. My wife cuts them up, puts them in with the baked beans, and I'll nuke it at lunchtime and I'll eat it.
Oh, there we go. See, I
Yeah.
like doing that as well, because dinner from the night before can always be the next day's lunch. But so, Don, my last question for you is, so if there were no one else to market to in terms of life insurance other than Gen Z and millennials, how would you get in touch with these people? How would you get in front of them to speak to them?
It's a challenge because we just went through a situation. We have several marketing things that we do, one of which I'm not going to tell you about simply because it's actually starting to work and I'm so excited about it. It's awful. And it was so painfully obvious that it was awful. But I think what you have to do is you have to look at technology in terms of how it touches people. And I'll give you a perfect example. We were into texting. Somebody came to me one time and they're like, "Oh, we have this texting thing and we can blanket the free world. We can do this and do that." And we test a lot of things. If it's out there, we're going to test it to see what works and what works best. It didn't work that well. And it didn't work that well. Geofencing is another perfect example. I thought that would be the neatest thing on the planet. Unfortunately, it doesn't exactly work the way they tell you, meaning that you geofence a Walmart, you're not real sure what's in that Walmart. And so you're going to hit a lot of people with a message that is not the message you want to hit that group of people with. And so for us, what we're doing right this minute, in fact, we were talking about it yesterday, we're talking about it again today, is a technology area that reaches that group of people, because that group of people watches a certain amount of television. They play with their phones a lot. They're going to go out and they're going to be interactive, the Instagrams, TikToks, things of that nature. And so we're looking at all of those different areas to see, because I've noticed Instagram being a perfect example. We've got a couple Instagram accounts. I'm not a huge fan. I get it. It's fun stuff. But years ago, Facebook was a perfect example where we went and targeted something and paid somebody to create something for us. They did a fantastic job. Fantastic. Traffic off the chart. Not one single phone call. And so I think what your challenge is how do you meet that group halfway? Meaning that you want to put that message out there, there, how do you get them to respond back to you? And I think a big part of it is that you're not going to get them to respond to you simply because they're smarter than that. But what you are going to get is when that opportunity matches up with what you're doing now, when they've gone and they're looking for ways to cure that problem. You're hungry and you want to find a barbecue restaurant. Okay. Well, you don't want to go to a barbecue restaurant every day. I love barbecue, but eating it 7 days a week would be disgusting. But you have to use the technology. You have to figure, and technology has changed so much. Like I say, cell phones are actually $1,000, but my granddaughter's got 2 of them. Neither one of them work because she's broken. But I think that you have to find a way to match up the technology that they use and employ at the same time with the message that you want to deliver.
I love that you brought up you had spent a lot of time and gaining a lot of traffic using social media and using Facebook, but without having a phone call. And I think that is so for me as a social media strategist, I laugh at that because I feel you. Like I understand the feeling of having all of these like the high reach and the high impressions, but not really seeing any return on investment from the amount of time or money that you might have spent on ads or whatever the case may be. Because at the end of the day, it's all about being able to create the need with messaging. But if your audience member or anybody who sees that message, if it's not aligning with whatever they need in their life, you're not going to get that phone call. You're not going to generate the business and the traction by posting on Facebook every single day or Instagram every single day. You will eventually, because you are creating that content and pushing it out into the world and generating more brand awareness for yourself. And then as soon as that person who has seen that post, who maybe, was one of those thousands of people that maybe saw that, once they do have that need, then you're going to be the person that they're going to call. But I'm glad that you brought that up because I was kind of chuckling to myself a little bit because I'm just like, oh, I get it. I get it all too much.
Well, there's a thing that the Constant Contact says where 75% of the time, when I'm ready, I can't find you. And that's why we've had people contact us or call in here and they go, we've seen you in a lot of places, but you're not number one. And I go, of course not, but you were always in the top 3 or top 5. And that realistically is my goal, is that to be number one is so expensive that I don't think it's a worthwhile goal. However, to be in the top 3 or 5, you can do, and you can do that reliably such that you've seen me, you've seen me, you've seen me. We had another agency years and years ago, and I forget what the product was because I don't even remember buying it, but I must have bought it. That basically, if you were in a certain geography and you were looking for a certain thing, they'd pop up, and they had somebody pull into their parking lot and type something in, and we came up. They didn't come up, we did. And so they called me up because they got kind of a chuckle out of it because they were paying for a service where if you were in their parking lot, and it's a parking lot with a lot of different businesses, they should have come up, but they didn't. We did. And so we laughed about that. And I don't even remember what the service was. But I think that you've got to be there. The frequency is a huge, just like with radio, just like with television, on any kind of social media stuff, frequency is a big, big deal when they're searching.
I agree. I definitely think that brand awareness is so important because people have to know about you in order to buy from you. They have to be able to see your messaging at least 22 times in order for them to even consider you. And then once they have made that consideration, that you have to be readily available. And I think that is something that not a lot of agents or brokers really consider, is being readily available to people when they're make a comment on social media, or even sending you an instant message or an email, or even call you. Because most of the time, if somebody's brave enough to pick up the phone and they call you and you don't answer, more than likely they're going to start looking somewhere else. And if you're not able to return their call within a really short period of time, more than likely they've already moved on to someone else. So making sure that you're readily available is extremely important.
I believe you better take that call now. And
yeah, exactly.
The reason I believe that is we had a woman last Friday, and I don't remember the last time this happened, pulled up to our door, walked in. Do you do this? Yes, we do. Okay, I'm looking to do that. And she was in her late 20s. And I was just, the whole thing blew me away because we're trying to backtrack and figure out how she got to that point. And the conversation that we had recently was, I can spend millions on advertising, but it doesn't do any good if when that phone rings, you don't pick it up and you don't immediately deal with it. Unfortunately, people believe, well, I'm going to get back to them. Well, you go ahead and get back to them. You get back to them all you want. By the time you get back to them, they've already made a decision. We had someone here who got the back to them disease. And the problem with it was that by the time they did, there's a thing in our business called exclusive leads. I don't think there's a bigger joke out there than exclusive leads. Because I'm sorry, the fact that you went to company A, you asked for this information, and they sold it to me doesn't mean you didn't do the same thing 10 other times with company B, C, D, or F, because you did. I know you did. You went out to the search engines, and the one that landed you, terrific. But you've had other opportunities. And it's a matter of, I want to give a response to what I call a respectful response. People like to be treated the way they like to be treated. And it's just that, women are a great example. Women do such a big percentage of the buying decisions. And if you're talking to a woman, a single mom in her 20s, got children, runs her house, has a job, does all the things she needs to do, you need to speak to her differently than the girl that came in here with her dad, who's 19, he's buying her first car insurance. He just bought her first car. That's a different person as compared to a mom in her 50s, who she's been through the challenges of a divorce twice, and now she's got teenage kids. So you have to meet those people where they want to be met, but they want to be met now. Nobody wants to wait till next week. They just don't have that patience.
Oh yeah, we just don't have the time. There are so many things that are demanding our attention these days that it can be literally impossible to try to keep up with absolutely everything. I tell our agents that are on our social media marketing programs all the time that not only are you competing for the attention of your audience members from other agents in your local area or just other agents on the internet, you are competing for that audience member's attention from every single company, brand, every industry on the planet that has a presence on the internet. So this is the reason why your content needs to be educational and needs to be engaging, and that you need to be able to capture somebody's attention, because if you're not, then it's not going to work. But yeah, Don, is there anything else that you would like to add, or where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
They can call us, they can go online. We actually have two different agencies here, but those people that love life insurance, they can go to AffordableOne.com. They can call us 407-965-4166. They can email me. I have a really clever email, insuranceman@AffordableOne.com. And we spell out the one, O-N-E. I've had that forever and ever, and it's a great story. I went to a lady's house one time. She got a phone call, and she picked the phone up, and she said, well, I'm really busy. And I can hear somebody say, what are you doing? She says, well, I'm here with the insurance man. So I stole that as my email, and I've used it for years and years and years. And so realize, if you have questions, we will answer your questions. You may not be our customer today. You may not ever be our customer. We'd like you to be our customer, but we are going to tell you, early this morning, I had a meeting and I told someone, I'm sorry, what you were told is wrong. You have to stop believing in your neighbors, mechanics, girlfriends, dog catchers, best buddy. They're not an insurance agent. They don't do this for a living. We do this for a living. As such, we're very particular to make sure that what we're giving you information-wise is absolutely correct. Yeah, I'm shocked how many calls we get back going, you're the only people who actually told me that. Yep. And there's a reason, because we want you to have the right information to make the easiest decision, the best decision for you.
That's a very, very important mindset to have, is making sure that you have the most correct and educational information for your clients, because they are going to thank you so much more for being open and transparent with them and having kind of like giving them almost like the inside scoop into their insurance policy, because that's what is really going to go a long way. So just to kind of like recap what we talked about today, we talked about what is life insurance and how does it work. So we talked about how the insurance policy is there to protect you, your friends, your family from any financial burden that happens to you after you pass. We talked about the benefits of an IUL. We also talked about how people are living longer and the average cost of living is going up exponentially, and even how the cost of childcare has gone up and how that relates back to single moms or even single dads. And the reason why having life insurance on your previous partners or the fathers of your children is going to be so much more important than even on your current partner, because if there are any financial burdens that are left behind from that previous partner, that you need to make sure that your children are taken care of. And we also talked about marketing to this demographic of Gen Z and the millennial generation by using technology. So some ways that you can do that is by having great search engine optimization. The geofencing is not as great as it used to be. It used to be a really, really great tactic. It's still something you could do, but is not going to drive as much performance as you could with other things. And also using social social media. So using social media to generate brand awareness. And even though you might not be getting the impressions or the views on your videos, whatever the case may be, is that you just have to stay consistent. And the more number of times that your content is being seen by an audience demographic of people, the more likely that you will have to generate that brand awareness. And then that's when the calls will really start to roll in. So yeah, Don, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of the Direct Insurance Podcast. I hope that everyone out there listening learned something new today, because I know I did. And so to view this podcast after it airs, you can watch it over on the Insurance Advisors Direct YouTube channel. And speaking of YouTube, don't forget to follow Insurance Advisors Direct on social media. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. If you are an independent agent or thinking of becoming an independent agent and are looking for an industry partner, we here at IAD would love to be considered. If you want to learn more about us at IAD, you can visit our website, www.iadbrokerage.com, or call us toll free, 1-800-381-0977. Thank you so much, Don, for joining me today. And I look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thank you. It's fun.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.